Howdy folks, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another episode. So this will be the most boring and frustrating episodes that I have ever to prepare for this campaign. Because, well, in 1943, the push for Africa carried on and was only, let's say, completed by mid 1944. And whenever I have to push into Africa, it's always a pain in the butt because in this case, I mean, always Africa, it's a pain because of the low infrastructures, because of the poor supplies. But here, the situation was made even worse by the fact that I was not directly controlling the African land, but because of the stupid way that conquering land from one of your allies work. Basically, all the land was going to the Kingdom of Iraq, which was in the Axis because the British declared war on it early in 1941. And the only good news came from India, where India finally capitulated, and this allowed me to relocate HOTS and von Manstein's panzer groups back into Germany. Von Kleist's panzer group finished the liberation of the Italian Libya and was sent to Central Africa to aid General Stolman's 7th Army, which was again fighting an overstretched and overextended war in Central Africa. Um, while, despite, let's say, the Allies having suffered some tremendous losses in the Battle of the Middle East and in the Battle of Egypt, they still had apparently a crap ton of troops, and those crap ton of troops was mobilized on the, I would say, Western Central African front. And I was forced at the beginning to relocate von Kleist's panzer group to help in stabilizing the African front. I saw there were these two kind of pincers made by Dolman's 7th Army, and I decided to just again shrink the front line because the front line was getting way too overextended. Unexpectedly, the Italians and the Romanians even came to aid, which was very funny because they did not come in Russia, but they came to Africa. And this, again, posed a big problem because they were just basically sucking supplies away from my troops. I changed a bit the template of my marine divisions, as you may have just seen, and spoiler alert, at some point I realized, oh cool, I even have the mechanized Marines battalion. So let's just put the mechanized Marines battalion because it's cool, to have mechanized Marines battalions in your divisions. And yeah, for the struggle in Africa, the goal was very simple: to encircle and before destroying, the idea was to cut off the Allied troops from their supply lines. And the Allied had three major supply lines, two ports in West Africa. I'm sorry, I don't know the geography of Africa. I don't know which countries were they, and of course the supplies flowing from South Africa. So while a part of Dolman's 7th Army sealed off the South African corridors, the panzers of von Kleist initially rushed against the, I would say, northern port in Western Africa, and then a detachment of panzer grenadiers advanced westwards to cut off the Allies from their last supply source, basically. And yeah, I did risk losing one of my divisions because I was, playing too in such an aggressive manner that I lost control of my troops and the Allies. I managed to encircle a bunch of them, but thanks to my quick response, I prevented the catastrophe from unfolding in Africa. And having surrounded the last Allied pockets, I decided to go against South Africa. And the the battle for South Africa was probably one of the bloodiest and longest battle I've ever had to fight in Africa, because out of nowhere, I think the second and third wave of Allied reinforcement just um, was concentrated in South Africa. Basically, it looked like even the whole freaking goddamn Royal Air Force was in the bloody South Africa, and I could not, um, let's say, contest um, contested. I could not prevent the enemy or deny the enemy air superiority because I had no airport and I could not build any airport because of Iraq controlling all of my lands. I was like, oh my god. Still, once again, when I concentrated the attack of my motorized infantry in my panzer divisions, I did manage to break through the South African lines, and everything was looking too good to be true because despite encircling, I think, 6 or 7 divisions, the bulk of the enemy forces was still concentrated in South Africa, and my troops were simply not strong enough to break through the very last enemy defensive line. I must confess that the mountains, the mountain in mountains in South Africa did provide the Allies with an incredible amount of defensive power, and the lack of von Kleist panzers also, let's say, affected the outcome of the early battles that were being fought in South Africa. Therefore, I said, okay, let's just bring some air wings, because now I could gain control of at least 2 airfields. So I brought down a fighter wing and a bomber wing, and I also decided to bring down 6 divisions of mountaineers because I had them. I was planning to use them for my offensive in the in the Caucasus. I'm sorry for that, but I was like, okay, now it's time to, let's say, see what those boys can do. I did seal off, I think it was Cape Town, from the rest of the South African front, but still the Allies could still enjoy the supplies flowing via 2 ports. So there was basically no point in doing what I just did. And having conquered one of the South African ports, I could finally starve, let's say, the enemy troops there. And yeah, in that point, when I was looking at how slowly the mountaineer divisions would have traveled to reach the South African front, I was like, no, I want to risk everything. I will send them via sea. And even though the mountaineers did manage to come on time, it was basically too late because the bulk of the Allied forces were encircled and, as always, let's say, forced to surrender um, east of Cape Town. With only Cape Town left over in South Africa, basically the battle was won. Here I was just preparing my air wings of naval bombers because even though it was already quite late in the year, it was already 1944, and this tells you how much time it took me for to conquer South Africa. I decided to start preparations for the let's say, crossing of the English Channel, even though now I guess should be recalled the German Channel. And yeah, with the help of the mountaineers coming from Germany, I put an end finally to the Battle of South Africa. And another good news is that I did finally research the first model of the Panther tank, and the Panther tank was finally put into production. I actually had 2 lines of Panther tanks in the production queue, and each line consisted of 55 factories. So I had 110 factories producing Panther tanks. And when I had enough Panther tanks in my reserve, I converted all of my Panzer divisions into the meme Panzer division. So the exactly this one, the Panzer division with only Panther tanks, mechanized infantry, self-propelled artillery, a medium self-propelled artillery, and a medium tank destroyer battalion. So, because I was like, with those divisions, I plan not only to conquer Britain, but also to conquer the US. And as the Battle of Britain was raging on, I decided that it was time to recall everyone and everything back to Europe and start planning for the big jump. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. And stay tuned, because in the next episode we will finally attempt Operation Sea Lion. Take care and see you soon.
Die Soldaten